Hello. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're hosting the Northeast Ohio Media Group debates for Parma City Council Ward 6, up for election November 5th. One of the candidates, Mr. Michael Hustick, couldn't be here this evening. So instead of doing a traditional debate, we're going to do something a little bit different. First, we'll have the incumbent introduce himself and then answer a couple of quick questions. I'm Mara Zurich with the Northeast Ohio Media Group. Councilman, would you like to say a few things about yourself?
Sure. I'm Ward 6 Councilman Larry Napoli. I've been honored and privileged to hold that title for 6 terms right now, and I am seeking my 7th term on council. I'm a 30-year resident of the Ward 6, and I look forward to continuing serving, and my 6 terms has proved myself to be pretty worthy.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, let's kick off the questioning with an issue that sparked a lot of outrage in the community, the closing of the pools. Was closing the pools to save $200,000 the right decision, even though it angered many residents?
Yes, and you know, obviously as a resident myself, I can absolutely, we can see the problem that was going to occur because of the closing of the pools. But the bottom line of it was, we're looking at in a lot of areas to try to trim costs, because what's happened is we've been hit with a lot of cuts from the state level. But the pool program is about a 10-week program that costs the city $250,000 to run. And the other underlying factor that isn't realized too is the fact that it was going to cost the city money to even open those pools. They needed so much care. They were 60-year-old pools that just needed a ton of money already thrown into them. So it was a tough decision, but it was a decision that we felt we had to make. That is not to say that we're not going to open them up in the future. So we're still looking into keeping that open as well. I think that's important.
So do you think the pools will be open next summer?
I don't want to promise anybody anything that I don't know for sure. If I had my way, I would wish they would be open, and I'm hoping that they can.
All right. Recently, Mayor Tim DeGeeter proposed a garbage fee. Do you support this idea? If so, how much do you think the fee should be?
Well, I'm in an unusual, even though I'm in a race, but you know me, I'm not a political person. I will not be voting for the fee, only from the simple fact that I sold the whole idea on the fact to my residents that it was going to save them money. The recycling of the garbage was definitely a cost saver for everybody. So the fact that I did that, I'd be pretty hypocritical of me to vote for something that's now going to hit them with some more money. So I'm hoping that we can look elsewhere instead of doing something of that nature.
Would you support a property tax increase, income tax increase, changing the credit?
I would support something that could be voted for by the people.
Now for the garbage fee, that's just up to council, right? If the mayor decides to go that route?
It looks like it could be, yes.
All right. So, I mean, just talking here tonight, we know this already. Parma's facing some financial difficulties. The city has been for the last year or so, maybe a couple years really, since the state cuts have taken effect. And many are blaming those state cuts. The mayor said, it's about $13 million the city has lost over the last 5 years.
Right.
So what can be done to offset those cuts?
Well, I mean, we're creative. We're being real creative about that. And obviously everybody has to look. In everybody's budget, they have to trim. I know they've frozen a lot of workers. They've actually trimmed the workforce through attrition, so they're not really adding anybody to the workforce. But there are some places that you just can't trim, and for instance, safety. And I will not do anything to trim the safety forces for the city of Parma, because let's face it, that's numero uno for any resident out there, is the safety of our residents.
Mm-hmm. Now, also, in addition to those budget issues that the city's been having, the city's borrowing more than $2 million for the regional dispatch center that will be shared with Parma Heights and Brooklyn. Do you have any concerns about the city's ability to pay off that cost?
No, I don't. And in fact, that whole project is such a worthwhile cause and such a great investment, once again, for safety. What they're doing there and getting combined with other communities is really going to be such a huge feather in the cap for the city of Parma in the long run.
All right, so this has also been a point of contention for residents, the golf course. The last several years, the general fund revenues were used to basically bail out the golf course when it had losses. And this has been happening for the last 5-6 years. So should the city maybe look at, closing the golf course or even selling it?
No, no, not. In fact, the amount of money you're talking about that they're bailing them out is really not as much as that sustains that golf course. It's not, as far as the number, it's not a huge number. And the golf course actually in the last few years has really started to turn into a little gem. And I think that's something that when you have an asset like that in the community, that's something I would not want to get rid of. I would want to see what I could do to maybe get more money out of that golf course. Maybe we can look into some creative ways of getting funds into that golf course in other ways.
So going back to, staffing levels, residents have been saying, on cleveland.com, sometimes even at meetings, that some city departments are overstaffed. Do you think the city does need to make cuts to staff outside of safety, because you said you're obviously against that, but what departments could be cut?
I'll tell you right now, they're running pretty lean. I mean, and Mayor DeGeeter, when he even took over for Mayor DePiro, they're both on that same mindset, run as lean as you can, knowing that the funds aren't going to be there in our city. So without really digging deep in, I would trust the administration of what they're doing as far as the people they are handling in the different departments.
So 2 former council members recently called for a performance audit. They did when they were on council, and in 2013 a group of residents also called for one, but the city still hasn't requested it. Right. Should Parma consider a performance audit to help identify savings?
Well, if you think about it, we're auditing ourselves every day. I mean, everybody's looking at some fashion, a way they can save money in their departments, and many people are doing that as well. Having an auditor come in here trying to tell some certain people what they need to do. Yeah, it sounds great. It sounds like a great idea. Oh, they can find something you don't know about. But who knows their city better than those that are working and entrenched in the city? So I would say no, and it could actually even cost you money. Well, money, audit's not free. So I have faith in what's going on with our administration and the people that are handling it, that I think you can dig within what you're doing.
So at least one resident at every meeting, we've seen this, the last couple months, especially because the weather's warmer, these residents complain about the deer. And the administration said dealing with the overabundance of deer falls on the state, but as we know, the state won't step in, and neighboring cities have banded together to address the problem regionally. What do you think Parma should do? Would you support culling or allowing hunting within the city?
Well, actually, there has been some culling done in the city. In fact, there's been 2 different culling incidents they've had. So it is starting to happen, and I definitely I'm definitely in agreement that we have to have a regional approach at this, because let's face it, there's no fences around the cities. The deer aren't just picking Parma, and then the fences are closing. So, and I know there is something in the works that we, if you saw, remember on council, that we're doing, where we're getting Seven Hills and Broadview Heights, and we're going to come together for a deer control plan. And I think that is the answer, because most municipalities can't afford the actual tagging and removing of deer. It's unbelievable the cost involved there. But we are definitely looking at moving together for a regional approach. I'm all for that, because let's face it, it's going to help the deer as well as us, because we cannot keep going the way it's going right now. I myself personally hit a deer back in December, totaled my van. I'm not the only one. I pulled that car into Searle's garage, and there was 3 other cars there for the same reason. So this is becoming a huge problem for many, not only safety-wise, but also, the health in your backyards. Kids can't play in their yards. I know I have to police my yard before I cut the darn grass, and I'm not even near a wooded area. So calls come all the time. So I am definitely a preacher to the choir when you're talking about getting control of those deer. It's something we're definitely going to look at strongly, very strongly.
Now, Neighboring Independence allows bow hunting. They saw permits within the city to allow residents to go out and bow hunt within their property. Would you support something like that in Parma? Could that happen with the city's small property values and sizes? No, and that's exactly why I'm definitely not going to have that freewheeling of bow hunting within the city of Parma. No, whatever's going to happen is going to be an organized hunt, an organized culling by professionals, and not going to let everybody just go nuts in the neighborhoods, because let's face it, we're a lot more populous than Independence is. So Parma's housing rate had the steepest dive of Ohio's biggest cities at 20%. And your council colleagues have been talking about the number of vacant nuisance homes within the city. They've been bringing it up at almost every meeting, saying there's at least one on this block near their house. And some of them are horrible. They're damaged by fire. They sat abandoned for a very long time. What can Parma officials do to revitalize the city?
Yeah, and that's a big one is the nuisance abatements we can place on homes. And we have, to this point, done that on several homes, and it gets rid of some of those cancers that are building in your communities. The other thing that we need to do, and we all know this very well, we really need to get a better inspection team, more support for our inspection team. There's just not enough resources in that area. I mean, we get calls all the time. In fact, I just got 2 calls this week. Please check out the house. The gutters are falling off, the debris in the house. And it's just a shame that people let their property go, quite frankly, to hell like that. And it's not what we want to be anything that's going to be in our community that can become an eyesore and ruin the property values and actually make it the quality of life for people not so hot. Mm-hmm. So definitely we are going to try to support that inspection and get more of those going and try to keep our city and our homes looking a lot more vibrant.
Now, the mayor recently said that the building department is working with 2.5 inspectors, 2 full-time, 1 part-time. What can the city do? Right now, he said, there's obviously not enough money to increase the staffing levels there. Should the city maybe look to downsize somewhere else and hire more inspectors?
That might be something we might have to look at if that's where you want to put your emphasis on things. It depends on what departments we're going after, but something does have to be done. They know it, and I'm sure it's something that's going to have to be in front of a meeting at one point and be discussed very heavily.
Now, one councilman said that this is by far the biggest complaint he hears from residents is those problem houses. Is that a bigger complaint that you hear in your ward, or is that not an issue in your ward? It's
an issue in every ward.
Okay.
So, I mean, anybody that says it's not they're just not telling you the truth. But I'm sure I know they all face it because I see a lot of you see all the nuisance abatements that come forth in council, but. It's not the only problem. I wouldn't say it's the top problem. I think it's the one you get more calls on, but I think safety and security are top issues for all I go after those, number one, and then property after that would be second.
Okay. So last question for you. A group has been pushing for a dog park for the past several years. Should the city support a citizen-run dog park?
I'm going to say no there, and I'm coming back from a dog background. My mom and dad raised German Shepherds, and so I fully know what it is to want to be able to run your dogs, okay? But I certainly wouldn't take those to a park to run them. I would take them to a field somewhere where they can stretch their legs a little bit better. Unfortunately, I've seen some of the parks that there have been, and I just think it's conducive to some issues you're going to find as far as dogs getting along, people getting along, who's going to clean them up, all that. It's just too much. And so I would not support a dog park.
So do you think safety would be a concern there? Like you
I
said,
do.
Dogs getting along. What do you mean by that? Like fighting,
I think,
or?
Yeah, you could have, it's been the size of dog versus a small dog. I mean, what do you do at that point? You put the little dogs in this area, the big dogs in that area. It just gets too cloudy, too cloudy.
All right. Well, Councilman, that's all the questions we have for you tonight. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all for joining us. Please check back to cleveland.com to read a little bit more about the debates, the candidates, and the issues for the upcoming election. Early voting starts October 6th.